Hello, everyone. It's Rodrigo here bringing you another interview for Sonic Perspectives. This is our first video interview, and we'll start on a high note with a man who's famous for playing so many notes, Mr. John Petrucci. John, thank you for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm the first one. I'm so honored.
You are.
All right, cool.
Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about your solo album, Terminal Velocity, which was released digitally last Friday. Are you happy with the reaction so far?
I am. I'm very happy. I mean, the response has been incredibly positive. People seem happy and excited and seem to really like the music. So, I mean, it was a great release day. It's been a great few days to see that, and I'm very thankful and grateful to everybody for all the nice comments. It's really been fun.
Right. And
Yeah.
this time you worked for a few months on the album as opposed to your first one, Suspended Animation, where there were stops and starts, right?
Right. Yeah.
Do you feel that played a part in how the album came out in some way, or?
I think so. I mean, for me, I much prefer doing something from, beginning to end, being able to focus on it, and get the consistency of all the sounds and, not be distracted by other things and have to stop and start. I think it definitely helped the album. I think it helped the sound and production of the album. I think it helped the flow of the writing, not to have to interrupt it that way. So yeah, I
Mhm.
think it definitely did. I think it had a positive effect.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
for me, from my perspective at least, these songs on Terminal Velocity feel more like they're part of a bigger picture than the
Right.
ones on Suspended Animation.
Sure.
Even though some of them have appeared in your set list before with G3, like Glassy Eyed Zombies, for example, and Happy Song, which was
Yeah.
called Cloud 10,
It
right?
was. Yes, it was. I changed the name.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. And there's another song you played on those G3 shows called Zero Tolerance,
Yeah.
which you didn't record this time. Was it not a good fit for the rest of the material, or are you saving it for something else, or?
I reviewed that song and I just didn't feel like it was strong enough.
Mhm.
I don't know. That's just my own personal opinion about it. I thought the other material was stronger. Plus, I wanted to write, a bunch of new stuff, and so, if I put that one on, then it would have been 5 songs,
Yeah.
old, and I don't know. I just wanted to write some new stuff. So I just thought out of all of the older stuff, that was not the strongest. So I decided to leave it off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All
I
right.
mean, so, and actually, I kind of, what made me feel that way was when I was actually played it live
Mm-mm.
on G3. I just didn't have, I don't know. The vibe to me wasn't as strong as like
Right.
when I played Glassy Eyed, like I felt this audience, vibe. And with Zero Tolerance, I was like, it's okay. I don't know. Just
Right.
wasn't as cool. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Makes sense. There's another one that is an old tune, which is called Gemini,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Which we know from your DVD Rock Discipline. And I'm glad you finally did a fully recorded version of that song for us to enjoy.
Yeah.
And it does fit well with the rest of the songs, don't you think?
I do. I was a little bit worried about it because
Mm,
it was written so long ago, and it stylistically it's very different than the newer material.
mm,
And I wrote it at the time for, as more of like a almost a guitar demo-ish kind of song.
right.
So when I listen to it, like it sounds a little bit immature in the writing style. It's not as cohesive as the new music, but I don't know. Maybe that's cool. Maybe that's something that people like. I mean, I was a lot younger then, and
Mm,
I was doing guitar clinics and needed some sort of demo tracks so I could play. And so
okay.
that's sort of what it sounds like to me, but I tried to modernize it and make it cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you kind of feel that way when you bring songs from like when Dream and Day Unite into the set and you
Yeah.
look back and you go, oh, what was I thinking? Or
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit, yeah. I
right.
think uh I think when Dream and Day Unite, and I mean, it's a lot of people might not have even heard some of like the original like Majesty
Demo.
demos,
Yeah.
we did, and like some of the old songs. Yeah, I get that feeling like, oh, it's like I cringe. Like it sounds like little kids trying to write music. But
Right.
um, what I think, as of Images and Words, I started to feel more. All right, like even when I play those songs live now, they still
Hold up.
stand up. When Dream and Day Unite has a little bit of that, immaturity
naivety.
vibe to
Yeah,
me. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, makes sense.
Hmm.
And tell me about Temple of Circadia, which in my
Yeah.
mind is one that will please the Dream Theater fans the most. And
Yeah,
what
right.
exactly is Circadia?
Well, I was thinking, you know the term circadian rhythm, your
Oh, right, yeah,
like your
pattern.
sleep cycle.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's where I don't even know if circadia is a word, but I just thought it was cool.
right. Is
You
there
know,
some sort of motif that repeats itself during the song, or like a riff, or?
I mean, that's the melody in that song was something that I had written, uh, that repeats a couple of times that I thought was pretty strong. The main opening riff does reoccur a few times. I mean, I think stylistically you're right. I mean that song was written on a seven string.
Mm,
Uh, I could picture that fitting into with the Dream Theater catalog. If there
yeah.
were vocals and keyboards, it probably would sound like a Dream Theater song. It kind of has that more metal prog thing going on. Yeah, that's probably one of the ones on the album that's more Dream Theater sounding,
Uh-huh.
for sure. But it's funny how it takes on a new light when it's just only guitar, bass, and drums, and I can kind of steer it in the direction of solo album just by the orchestration and the way that I'm playing guitar on it, the way the guitar is playing all the melodies instead of
Hmm.
the vocals, the way the guitar is playing all the solos instead of sharing them, things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand. And Snake in My Boots for me, I think it's a personal favorite of mine.
Oh,
It's
cool.
designed to be played live, right?
It
With
is.
the clapping and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I, it's funny because some of the songs that I almost took a little lighter, like
Mm,
that were just kind of fun, like Out of the Blue and Snake in My Boot, like they're turning out to be favorites of people,
yeah.
and those are the most fun kind of songs for me. Um, a while back I had this idea like that it would be really cool to get the audience doing some sort of pattern and then just playing guitar to that pattern.
Hmm.
Like my original idea is that it would just be single guitar, no other instruments. But, we developed it more than that. But for the most part, it is just like a one guitar throughout. I mean, it plays all the rhythm, then it shifts to the solos and it goes back to the rhythm. It doesn't really there's not really layers of rhythm guitars and stuff like that. It's just meant to be like a live, like you said, like a live
Yeah.
interactive thing. Yeah,
Absolutely.
you could
Yeah.
play it by the campfire.
Yeah. And I think the idea was, of course, to distance yourself from Dream Theater sonically a little bit to a certain extent. Were there moments where you wrote something for the album and you thought, like, no, this is too Dream Theater-esque, let's leave it behind? Or,
Well, I have a funny story about that actually.
mm,
I actually all the time I collect different song ideas and seeds and
mm,
things that I'll use later, and I organize them, and I use some of the stuff with Dream Theater and some of the stuff with my solo album. And one day in the studio, I had written a this whole section of music. Spent most of the day working on it,
mm.
and thought it was really really cool. And came in the next day, and something was bothering me about it. I'm like, sounds really familiar.
Yeah,
And we'd really worked on it. Me and my engineer programmed the drums. I'm like, I can almost picture like keyboards over this. It's just something is like really bothering me. And then it clicked that I had rewritten an older Dream Theater song because 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 I forgot to delete the song idea from my
uh,
collection of ideas.
Jesus, that
So
must happen a lot.
it doesn't happen a lot.
No?
Thankfully, no, it does not happen a lot. But it was a full wasted day of rewriting a song that I wrote before. So it
No
was
way.
pretty funny. I
All
thought
right.
you have to laugh.
Of
You have
course.
to
Of
laugh.
course. Yeah.
It was a good exercise.
Yeah. And the album cover is kind of a natural sequel to Suspended Animation, and it
Yeah.
has, I think, a common theme with Distance Over Time, the latest Dream Theater album. And it's the notion of man versus machine a little bit.
Mhm.
Was that deliberate, and did you think of it in those terms, or not really?
Well, I mean, there's three different artists on the three releases you mentioned. The
Yeah.
original Suspended Animation was one artist. Hugh Syme is the artist for Distance Over Time, and Sean Mosier Smith is the artist for Terminal Velocity. And when I hired Sean to do this, he knew that it was my solo album. Obviously, he saw the original album cover. I told him I wasn't looking for something in the direction of what Dream Theater does with the sort of more surrealist photography. I
Hmm.
wanted something colorful. I wanted something, just unique to this. And he presented a few different covers, and
Okay.
this one immediately, along with the title of the record, like you said, it kind of felt like a companion to
Hmm.
Suspended. Like when you put them side by side, they almost look like,
They
you
make
know,
sense.
yeah,
Yeah.
they make sense. The titles, the looks, one is like more white, one's more black, and they're both colorful, and they kind
Yeah.
of just work together. I don't know. They look like the yin and yang of
Yeah.
of albums. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And one choice I thought was quite unusual was Andy Snipe, who's famous for his work with more traditional metal bands like Judas Priest, Accept, Testament.
right.
How did you reach the conclusion that he'd be a good fit to mix the album?
I mean, I've been a fan of his as a mixer. I think he's an incredible mixer. He is a guitar player. He gets it.
Yeah.
My wife and I saw him. I met him for the first time. We saw Judas Priest, and so we saw Andy play with Priest and met
Oh,
him. Started uh, talking to him through email then, just about nothing, just like sharing photos from the night.
okay.
But I don't know if this is a guitar centric album. Most of the material is pretty heavy. It's like on
Yeah.
the head, and so I thought, man, Andy's like, I think he'd do a killer job on this. And yeah, I wasn't wrong. I mean, I love what he did
Yeah.
on this. He did a really great job. He's just
Yeah.
so good with. He's great with guitars, obviously all instruments, drums, bass, but it's the clarity on this record. The
Absurd.
way that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
the way that he makes like the rhythm guitars speak in one way, which is kind of a very sort of three-dimensional. They have a lot of aggression and hair to them. They really like stand out.
Hmm.
And then the lead guitars are, have a very vocal sound. And so, yeah, he just did a phenomenal job. So happy to have Andy,
Yeah.
work with him for the first time. It was really cool.
It's amazing for
Yeah,
sure.
he's great.
And yeah. And I think the elephant in the room on pretty much all interviews I saw about the album is the fact that you and Mike Portnoy are playing together again. He
Right.
played drums on the album. For us fans, it's a joy, of course, to see you both working together.
Yeah.
We saw the pictures and the teasers and the videos and so on.
Yeah.
Did you have any concerns about this being the main topic of conversation and not the album itself, or was that discussed?
Yeah, that's exactly was my concern. I was like, well, that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah,
The conversation might be more about Mike and I playing together and less about the music.
yeah.
So I was a little concerned about that, but at the end of the day, I've said this before. It's like I wrote this between March and May,
Hmm.
and I live in New York, and it was just like, full on pandemic in the U.S. and
Yeah,
just woke up one morning like, life's too short. What am I worried about? So what if people talk? It's
yeah,
like it turned out to be a really cool thing actually, because there's a lot of positivity behind that decision. Like you said, fans' reaction was that they were so happy to see us playing together. So
yeah,
that infused an element of joy to the project. And I always put pressure on myself. Like, I have to deliver the goods, no matter who's playing on the record. This has my name on it.
yeah.
I haven't done an album in 15 years. I can't come out with a piece of crap. It better be good. So, I focused on the material and the sound, and like you said, using Andy. And so I knew that even if it got different type of hype or attention because of Mike, that the material would live up to that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, that was my
So be
hope.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So so I felt confident, and like I said, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, let's do it. Life's too short. Let's have some fun, and I'm glad I did. And Mike did a killer job,
he
as
did.
did As did Dave. I mean, two amazing musicians. I'm so lucky to be able to play with them.
Yeah. Dave, to be honest with you, I think he's the unsung hero of bass in
Oh
prog
man,
and prog metal.
I agree.
Right.
I
He
agree.
doesn't have enough credit. I don't know what goes on, but he should be in higher echelons, I believe. Right?
He is. I totally agree with you, and he is so. He's such an incredible musician. I mean, his like just his approach. First of all, his ability on the bass, just as a bass player, is amazing to
Yeah.
watch and to listen to. But he's just so musical. You know, when I've played so many shows with him on
Mhm.
G3, like just being on stage with the guy, he's like the consummate professional. He's just never drops a beat. He's just unbelievable as a musician. So I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
we need more recognition for Dave LaRue out there.
Yeah.
Definitely. I agree.
And speaking of Mike, a little bit again,
Yeah.
he has alluded to liquid tension being a possibility in the future. Jordan has spoken about it briefly as well. Is there some sort of plan, or can you review anything, or is there a chance? Like,
I can't say anything.
okay, all right, and we'll leave it at that.
We'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And speaking of future plans, it was just announced that Dream Theater will record a new album in the fall.
Yeah.
When you start doing this, do you have anything written beforehand? Do you bring stuff, or do you start from scratch? What's the philosophy there?
Well, it's kind of like, I mean, with Dream Theater, what we like to do most of the time is have a collective type of writing. We're all in the same room,
Hmm.
and you know, even if guys bring in ideas, it's more like you sort of play the idea and then everybody joins in and we bounce it off of each other, and that's how the songs are written. So it's always good to have some of those seeds that we talked about earlier, you know,
Okay.
just some places to go. Whether you use them or not, you don't have to use them, but they're good like
Okay.
starting points, you know. So
Hmm.
yeah, so we'll always come in with something, you know, just and what we'll usually do, which is really helpful too, is we'll discuss prior to those sessions the type of record we want to make, which I
Okay.
think is really important, you know. Um, you know, we have a long career and we have a large catalog, and so it's like we try to look at each album as being another sort of chapter in our story.
Hmm.
So when we approach a new album, we try to do something that's unique and that might just make things more interesting. You know, why do people want to keep listening to Dream Theater or want to get the new record if there's not anything new or different or exciting about it?
Yeah.
And so we'll discuss that beforehand so that everybody can kind of like just be, I don't know, on the same wavelength. And so what are we trying to do here, you know?
Hmm.
As opposed to just walking in like, all right, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do
Yeah.
you want to do?
Blank page. Yeah.
Yeah, blank page. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And at this point, I mean, at this point in your career, do you feel there's still something to conquer? You did like concept albums, you played with orchestras,
Sure.
acoustic shows, played albums in full. What keeps the fire in these five guys that make Dream Theater today?
Right. I do. I definitely think there's still a ton to conquer. There's always another idea. And, you know, you wake up one day and you're like, oh, you know what would be really cool if
Mm,
we did this or we tried that. Sometimes it could have to do with stylistic decisions. Sometimes it could have to do with production choices and decisions or direction.
yeah,
Like, hey, you know, we've never made a record like this. Let's try that. You know, sometimes in the case of Distance Over Time, it had more to do with like how we went about it, like just all the guys going away together and like, you know, just being
yeah,
isolated, like we never did that before. So sometimes it's about that, and you know, you try to make it fun and interesting and cool and unique, and ultimately you try to feel good about it so that when it comes out, you know,
yeah,
you're proud of it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. One curiosity I have as a fan is
Yeah.
you guys used to talk a lot about what would Rush do
Yeah, sure.
when it comes to making decisions and all that.
Yeah.
Can you give me an example where that rationale was employed, maybe musically or managing the career and so on?
Well, a good example is, and you know, we kind of it's a little bit unfair because we use the same artist as Rush used. You know, Hugh Syme he's
Yeah.
done most of Dream Theater album covers and he's done all of the Rush album covers. But that's a good example in I was always impressed by when they put out an album, everything can, centered around the art of that record. So,
Hmm.
not only the album, their merchandise, their advertising campaign, if you want to call it that,
Right.
their when you went to the show, their tour program, the look of the stage set, like everything just was like very much in the same aesthetic of the album art. And like a band like Iron Maiden does the same thing.
Hmm.
Metallica does the same thing. And it's kind of like you're welcoming people into this world that you created. And we really, really did that to the furthest degree on the with the astonishing.
Astonishing. Yeah.
Yeah, big time. And so that is definitely one of those what would Rush do, because they were the kings at doing that. When you walked into a Rush show, it's like, and you saw all the T-shirts of the concert that you're going to, and you
Yeah.
picked up the program. The program was all centered around the tour that you were going to, and you looked on stage, and it was, the video and the light show and the stage, everything had to do with, the concept. If it was Presto, if it was Signals, if it was whatever, it had to do with that album. And
Yeah.
again, Iron Maiden, total kings of doing that same thing. So yeah, that's a good example of that.
Indeed.
Keeping consistency in the artistic presentation.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let me talk about a trick that you do on guitar, which is present on pretty much every Dream Theater album. When you
Uh-huh.
sort of repeat the main melody of the song on
Hmm.
an ending solo, for example, on Octavarium, Pale
Yeah.
Blue Dot, you do that. And it's a great way to sort of stress and stretch the melody a little bit and to get the song ingrained in the brain,
Yeah.
right, of the fans. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Those are some of my favorite moments, honestly. I mean, it's as a guitar player, first of all, it's the best, one of the best writing instruments. So it's always fun to write music on
Hmm.
guitar because it just comes so naturally. It's fun to shred and play solos and improvise for sure. That's sort of like driving a fast car. But the moments that you're talking about where the guitar is the melody king and is
Yeah.
soaring and driving that melody, like on a song like At Wit's End,
Hmm.
off of Distance Over Time, does that same thing. That's some of my favorite moments, ever to play. It's I can't explain it. It's incredibly rewarding, just artistically, creatively. It's fun as far as being a guitar player and manipulating the notes to be as emotional as possible. And it's a good writing technique, I think, because it almost harkens back to a more symphonic style where you're stating these big, big melodies that maybe have been hinted at, but
Hmm.
then you're sort of like taking it home at the
Yeah.
end. And it gives a very sort of cinematic vibe as well. I mean, that all that sort of John Williams stuff and Hans Zimmer, that stuff is all
Yeah.
about that. Those big, big melodies that, cause you to cry or get emotional or remember that part of the movie or
Yeah.
whatever. So as a guitar player, those are some of my favorite moments to play
Yeah.
all the time. I will always be the guy to take that role.
Yeah. All right. Last question for me. Now that you have almost 2 hours worth of solo material, do you see yourself presenting these songs on a different setting than the G3 tours, or?
Well, I can now. I
Mhm.
can. Yeah, I never really had enough material to do a whole show, tour with. So we'll see. Obviously, the world is in a very, you know,
Yeah,
different
strange
place.
place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
strange place. We're not sure what's going to happen with live music or when. We're
Yeah.
all, hoping for the best. But, when that does get to a point, and other than Dream Theater touring plans, which are always really busy.
Yeah.
If something should come up, like the opportunity to do some kind of solo run, now I have some catalog. Now I can
Yeah.
play a full show. So that's cool,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah,
All right.
that's
Oh,
cool.
well, John, I want to thank you for your time, for so many years of amazing music, and for the new album, Terminal Velocity. All the
Oh man,
best, man.
thank you. Thanks
Thank you so
for
much.
having me be your first video guest.
No worries. Thanks.
All right,
Take
all
care, man.
right. Nice talking
Bye.
to you. Bye bye.
Bye.